We're on the top of Daf Dalet Omid Beis, and in the list of this brisa that we began on Omid Aleph of pledges and obligations for which delay will generate a violation of a lav of Bal Tiacher, we have Leket Shikrum Peh. Let's go over this very quickly. These are Matnas Adniyim. As far as Leket is concerned, we're talking about an Omer. He piles up his grains out in the field and he forgot them. He walked away from the Omer and left it there. Then we have something called Shichacha, where he was cutting and harvesting with a sickle and he left something behind. Then we have Peah, which means the corner of his field. According to the Chachamim, Midrabanan, he should at least leave 1/60th of his field. And all this has to be left for the Ani. Now Tosfos asks the following question: where's Bal Tiacher in Matnas Aniyim, Leket Shichacha Peah? Here, once he forgets it and it's Leket or Shichacha or Peah, then the Aniyim will come and take it. Where's the violation of Bal Tiacher? And Tosfos says that this brisa is addressing a scenario in which he actually collected all of these Leket Shichacha Peah on behalf of the Ani, but he hasn't yet delivered it to the Ani. And on this list, we have stuff. So I'll tell you a very quick story. I don't know if you like stories, but I have a good friend who's out in LA and he raises funds for a major organization. We'll call it a Jewish organization. Okay, they have a museum out there in LA. You might know what organization I'm referring to. Center, it's connected to the Holocaust, whatever it is. Anyway, he tells me that he got his first lesson in fundraising from a certain rabbi. I'm not going to mention the rabbi's name, just in case that rabbi is not alive anymore, but maybe he would be mocked if I publicize the story. And that rabbi was called upon by a great institution of Torah learning that he taught in to help raise funds. He was actually called upon by the president of the institution at a time when the organization, we'll call it an organization, I don't want to give too many hints, was very, very financially pressed. Anyway, they gathered, this rabbi agreed reluctantly, he never fundraised, but he agreed to make a pitch, and he went down and he spoke to the most wealthy, donors of that institution. He told them how much of a hakaras hatov he has for the institution, and so forth and so on. They raised $1 million. So my friend from LA was driving this rabbi back to his house, and he said to him, Rebbe, I was very impressed. So his Rebbe answered him, old pledges. Meaning, don't be impressed by $1 million in pledges. These are old pledges that haven't been paid up yet. That's Bal Tiacher L'Shalom. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Shlosha Regom Kisidron, V'chal Gematzos Tchil. I disagree with Tanakam who says any 3 Regom that pass by, you automatically violate Bal Tiacher. No, it's got to be Kisidron. There's the word Kisidron that I want you to write on the board. It's got to be Pesach first, then Shavuos, and then Sukkot. Rabbi Meir's a third Shita. Kevin Shover Alam Regel Echad over B'Bal Tiacher. Whenever he took the neder, his first regel that he encounters, he's got to fulfill that neder. If he doesn't, he violates Bal Tiacher. Rabbi Lozman and Yaakov Omer Kevin Shover Alam Shnei Regel, 2 Regel, any 2 Regel. Over B'Bal Tiacher. Rabbi Lozman Shimon Omer Kevin Shover Alam Chagasugos over Alam B'Bal Tiacher. It's not enough that he passed, let's say, Pesach and Shavuos. He's got to pass Sukkot. Once he passes Sukkot, then and only then does he violate Bal Tiacher. So we have, I think, 5 shitas all told. My time at the Tanakam. Now the Gemara picks them off one by one, each shita, to try to derive the conclusion from the Psukim. So the Tanakama says, any shalosh regolim that pass by, even shalosh kesidron, that's a violation of Bal Tiacher. How do we know this? Now, in order to put the biblical verses into context here for this sugya as an introduction, Let's go through the psukim in Dvarim Perek Tes Zayin. So Mar es Chodesh Aviv v'asisa Pesach Hashem Elokecha. Then we fast forward v'asisa Chag Shavuos Hashem Elokecha, and then Chag Hasukos Tasel Chashivas Yom. So the Torah here in Parshas Re'eh goes through all three regalim, and then it says Sholosh Pa'amim Bashani Yirah Kol Zchukas Pnei Hashem Elokecha B'Makom Asher Yivchar B'Chag HaMatzos U'B'Chag HaShavuos U'B'Chag HaSukkos Yirah Pa'amim Hashem Pnei Hashem Reikon Bichti Minayu Solok. I mean, the pasuk of Sholosh Pa'amim Bashana is a siluk. It's the very end of the three holidays that were explicitly delineated in the previous psukim. So why does it have to go ahead and say B'Chag HaMatzos, B'Chag HaShavuos, B'Chag HaSukkos? That's totally redundant. Shmamina lebalti acher. It's coming to teach me balti acher that there are three regalim, and when you allow three regalim to pass without fulfilling your neder, your obligation, bringing your korban, you violate balti acher. And there's no indication that it's got to be kisidra. So the svar pshuta before Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is that if the Torah requires three regalim, it's three regalim, 1, 2, 3, no matter where you start from, as long as you end up with three regalim. And that's why the Torah says Sholosh Pa'amim Bashana, and it goes through the three. Rabbi Shimon Omer, the Torah again had to delineate the three regalim and repeat it, and it's not redundant to teach me about the acher. But nevertheless, Eino Tzarech Lomar B'Chag HaSukkos. That pasuk, which is pasuk Tes Zayin in chapter Tes Zayin, 16:16, Sholosh Pa'amim Bashana, that pasuk is immediately following just two psukim earlier, Chag HaSukkos Tasel. So even if the Torah felt compelled to repeat the regalim in order to teach Baal Piachar of three regalim, it didn't have to repeat Chag HaSukkos. The pasuk itself in Parshas Re'eh is speaking about Chag HaSukkos. So it could have just said Yirah Kol Zchurcha Es Pnei Hashem Elokecha B'Chag HaMatzos U'B'Chag HaShavuos Sholosh Pa'amim Bashana. We know Chag HaSukkos because that's exactly the context of this pasuk. So why did the Torah have to repeat U'B'Chag HaSukkos? Lomar Shezeh Achron. When the Torah goes through Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, and Chag HaSukkos, what justifies the seemingly redundant repetition, unnecessary mention of Chag HaSukkos to tell you that Chag HaSukkos has to be the last on the list. And that teaches me the law of Kisidra. Now we go to Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says one regel is enough, my timer. How did he derive that conclusion? And the pasuk says, "Kiyam el hamakom asher yivchar Hashem Elokeichem mikol shivteichem l'suvet shmot sham l'shichno sidrushu ubasa shama v'aveisem shama l'seichem v'zivcheim asosechem shuvasiyetchem nidrechem nitzvosechem b'choros b'karchem mitzonah." So the Torah writes ubasa shama, and immediately v'aveisem shama, implying that when you get there to the Beis HaMikdash with any of the listed enumerated below, on that regel, havesem sham, you're obligated to bring your korbanos. So first regel that you encounter, and you're obligated to bring your korban. That's a very good argument. I mean, the pasuk seems to say ubasa shama, vavesem shama, olosechem, etc. You got to bring your korban then. When you first, for the first Samach regel, you come to the Yushalom. So Rabbanan, what are the Rabbanan going to do with that argument, with that pasuk? And the answer is, that's only an obligation. You're right. On the first regel, I don't disagree with Rabbi Meir. He's obligated to fulfill his neder. But that's only a mitzvah saseh. Ahu, the pasuk basa shama, v'aveisam shama, the essay to teach you that's a mitzvah saseh to bring your korban on the first opportunity when you come on the first regel, immediately after your neder, you have a mitzvah of Avesa. But as far as a lav of Bal Tiacher, the Torah says L'Tachel L'Shalmo, for that we need all three regel. Rabbi Meir would respond, Keva the Omelei Rachmana. I say, once the Torah commands you Bavesem in a mitzvah saseh, below I say, and he didn't bring it, which means he was ma'acher, because he violated non-fulfillment of his mitzvah's essay, is memela kamle b'bal tiacher. And the Torah says bal tiacher. And if the Torah says Rabbi Meir, a very sharp argument, the Torah says don't be ma'acher past the first regel of Avesem Shama, then obviously when it says bal tiacher, it means after that first regel. So the lav is just the flip side, a reflection of the essay. Rabbi Lezman Yaakov, my time, how does he come up with two regolim? Tichsiv, because in the Parsha of Musaf, which we bring on the Moed in Parshas Pinchas, Bamidbar Perchav Tes, Ele Tasu Lashem B'Moadechem. Levani Nidrechem, Nidvosechem, Lo Levsechem, Nidvosechem, Nizkehem, Nishalmechem. So the Pasuk says that you have to bring your Nidarim, your Nidavis on the Moadim, B'Moadechem. Bring it B'Moadechem. Now, when the Torah says Moadechem, we have a principle, Miut Moadim, any Miut of Lashon Rabim is only Shnayim. If the Torah wanted to indicate that his fulfillment requires, we give him a broader time period, in other words, expand it to three regalim, then why does the Torah say Moadechem, which applies to Moadim, and therefore Rabbi Lozman Yaakov concludes that two regalim is enough for a violation of Baltiyah. For Rabbanon, all the other Chachamim that rejected this limud of Moadechem, what do they do with this pasuk Moadechem, which seems to indicate that you violate Baltiyah after two Moadim? Hahulakir Rabbi Yonah, they want to use this pasuk of Moadechem for the drasha of Rabbi Yonah. Now, in order to appreciate the drasha of Rabbi Yonah, we're going to make the following statement. With regard to each one of the Moed, that includes not only Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, it also includes Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur. It also includes Shmini Atzeres, and Moed also includes Rosh Chodesh. They would be makriv on all the Moedim, a soyer lechatos, together with the Korban Muslim. And these Seirei Chatos had an agenda purpose of lechaper al chet. And the Mishnah at the beginning of Masechet Shvuos tells us which chet are they mechaper on. That's called Tumas Migdash V'Kadosh. What does that mean? Tumas Migdash V'Kadosh. Tamei Shenichnas LeMigdash, or a Tamei eats Kodshim. That's number one. And number two, Tar Sha'achal Kodshim Tmei. If you have Kodshim that already contract Tumah, you're not allowed to eat them. And for all those Averos, we bring a Sa'ir Lechatos, which is a carbon tzibur brought on all the Moed. Now, there's a machlokas Tanoim at the beginning of Masechet Shvuos. Exactly in what way do you violate Tumas Migdash V'Kadasha? For example, let's say he knew he was Tameh, then he forgot that he was Tameh, then he went into the Migdash or he ate Kodshim. Or, for example, he knew he was Tameh, he forgot that he was Tameh, and he never again remembered that he was Tameh. Or, for example, before he went into the Mikdash or he ate Kodshim, he never knew he was Tameh. I mean, there are so many different possible scenarios. And that's the Sugya Shvuos. So let's now learn the drasha of Rabbi Yonah. I have a very good friend here up the block, Rabbi Yonah. Rabbi Yonah, I wonder if he's learning Daf Yomi as well. Tiyom Rabbi Yonah, on this pasuk, and the Torah is comparing all the Moadim, including Rosh Chodesh, one to the other. They all have Seirei Chatos, and they all have one common kapara purpose. Shekulam mechaper al tumas migdash v'kadosh. And this is derived because in Sar Lechatis Rosh Chodesh it says Vayikra Yud Laseises Avona Eda, and the Gemara says in Shavuos on Daf Ches Lamid Shebechaper Al Tumas Migdash V'Kadosh. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon my time, he says that you only violate Bal Tiacher when he passes Chag HaShavuos. So the Gemara answers he knows it decided from a brisa. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, Omer. If the Torah had in mind, when it went out of its way to count the 3 regalim, which we said was redundant, to be mechayev Bal Tiacher for violating the 3 regalim, lo yomar ubechagas sukkos. The Torah did not have to repeat chagas sukkos in the list of modim shebo dibra kosev, as we mentioned earlier. The pasuk itself, sholosh pagav Hashana, is referring to chagas sukkos. Why repeat it? Lo manemar lomar shezeh goreh. That only Chagas Sukkos will bring about and generate a violation of the Issa Bal Tiacher. And the fulfillment of your neder is not dependent on 3 regalim, but rather on the regal of Chagas Sukkos. I wonder what the philosophy behind this is. What's so unique about Chagas Sukkos that Bal Tiacher depends upon that holiday amongst the 3? I suspect it has something to do with the mitzvah of tzedakah and matnas aniyah, because Sukkot is always identified Chag HaOsif when you go out and you collect the produce. Now you should be, your storehouses are full. You're a rich guy. Now you should be giving matnas aniyah. That's the nature of Chag HaSukkot. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, they hold that you violate Bal Tiacher even if you did not pass 3 regalim. After all, the Torah seems to go out of its way in a redundant form to indicate a whole list of all 3 regalim. Why did the Torah do so? The Omar Rav Yoshia. Rav Yoshia minayin latzeres sheyesh la tashlumin kol shiva. Atzeres is a reference to Chag HaShavuos, which is a 1-day holiday. And during the holidays, the Torah commands us in a whole variety, a whole array of obligatory korbanos. And one is called Re'iyah. Re'iyah means lo yirah panai reikam. Aliyah l'regel requires that you bring a korban olas Re'iyah. You're also required to bring what's called shalmei chagiga. Now, in addition to that, there's something called shalmei simcha. So we have basically olas Re'iyah. We have chagiga, to bring a korban shlomim, that should be brought on the first day of the Chag. And then we have what's called shalmei simcha, to bring a korban shlomim in addition to the shalmei chagiga. So we have shalmei simcha and shalmei chagiga. We also have olas re'iyah. Now, let's say he did not bring his korbanos at the beginning of the holiday. Then Tashlum called Shiva. He has 7 days of Tashlum. But what about Shavuos? I mean, I understand the other regalim, you have 7 full days to rega. So the answer is Talmud Lomer, but Chagamatzos, Chagashuos, Chagasukos, Makish, Chagashuos, and Chagamatzos. Ma Chagamatzos, if he didn't bring his Olas Riyah, Shalmei Chagiga, on the first day of Yom Tov, is Yeshlo Tashlumin, Kol Shiva, Af Chagashuos, Yeshlo Tashlumin, Kol Shiva. That's why we don't say Tachman for 7 days. So the Gemara asks the following question. In the context of this hekage of Rav Oshia, it's very strange. We equate Chag HaShavuos with Chag HaMatzos. Why not equate it with Chag HaSukkos? The Lekish Chag HaSukkos. And now we have enough Gemina. By equating Shavuos to Sukkos, we get an extra day of Tashlumin. Why so? Mal Alan Shmonen. Afkan Shmonen. We have 8 days of Sukkot. I mean, 7 plus 1, which is Chag HaTzeres. And you could bring a Hashlama, your Tashlumim, even on Chag Atzeres, even on Shmini Atzeres, so you have 8 full days. And if we're equating Shavuos to Sukkot, then instead of 7 days of Tashlum, we should have 8 days of Tashlum. And the Gemara rejects this by saying Shmini Regel B'fnei Atzmo. That Chag Sukkot actually terminates after 7 days, and Shmini Atzeres is a different holiday unto itself with its own brand new obligations of Karbanos. So the Gemara seems to be assuming that in the context of Shmini Atzeres Regel B'fnei Atzmo, you cannot use the day of Shmini Atzeres as a tashlum for the Karbanos that you didn't bring during the 7 days of Sukkot. So the Gemara rejects them. To what extent, relative to what dinim, do we apply this principle that Shmini Atzeres is separate from Sukkot, it's independent? That's Inyan Pazar Kashat, which is pious, Zman, Regel, Korban, Shir, and Brach. Avol Inyan Tashlumin. But with regard to the Karbanos of Chag HaSukkos that you're obligated to bring and you did not bring, we're going to give you Tashlumin even on Shmini Atzeres. Divrei HaKol, everybody agrees that Shmini Atzeres is Tashlumin. The Rishonu Desnan, we have a Mishnah in the first parak of Chagiga. Mishalo Chag, he didn't bring his Karban Chagiga on Yontif Rishon Shal Chag, in the first day of Chag HaSukkos. Chogeg Eskol HaRegel, he can bring his Karban Chagiga during the entire regel, all 7 days of Chag HaSukkos. And not only that, but v'chein v'yontov achron shel Chag, even on Shmini Atzeres, it's explicit in the Mishnah that you can be mashlin a tashlumin of the chova, the obligation of the karbanos of Sukkot, even on Shmini Atzeres. In that context, Shmini Atzeres is the last day of Sukkot. So Chag HaSukkos now gives him a tashlumin called Shmona, and now we have a hekesh. We don't know whether to compare Shavuos to Pesach, and therefore you only have 7 days of Tashlumin, or to compare Shavuos to Chag HaSukkos, which would give him an extra day, an 8th day of Tashlumin. So it's like a toss-up. We don't know which way to go because all these 3 regalim are written in the same pasuk, so the hekesh can go either way. So the Gemara now activates the following principle. Tafasta meruba lo tafasta. Tafasta mua tafasta. It's always a good idea when you have a choice between less and more, go for less. Why? So Rashi explains, not here but elsewhere, that if you talk tofes meruba and then they disprove you, then you turn out to be a liar. It's very, very humiliating. But if on the other hand you take the mu'at and they tell you, oh, you could have even done more, all right, nobody disagrees with my mu'at. For example, in this application, 7 days for sure, beyond the shadow of a doubt, based on the Hekesh to Matzos. Chag HaMatzos, you have 7 days of Tashlumin. So if I say that on Shavuos it's 7 days of Tashlumin, nobody can reject that idea. That's certainly true. 7 is part of 8. But if I would say 8, and someone would say to me, well, why are you equating it to Sukkot? Why not equate it to Pesach? And you end up with 7. I look very bad because I added an extra day with the Shalom Kidin. So it's always a good idea to take the Mu'at rather than the Meruba. And this seems to be not only a moral principle and a good piece of recommendation, a good piece of advice, but it's a methodological principle that teaches me how to learn and derive halachos from the Torah. Tafasta meruba, lo tafasta, tafasta mu'ah, tafasta. And by the way, this reminds me, again, I don't want to equate it with the Gemara at the beginning of Bava Kama. The Gemara has a case where you're not sure whether he's chayiv or not, and the psukim could go either way. The Gemara says we have to assume he's potter until we know for sure that he's chayiv, because if you make him pay out of pocket, you might be, stealing his money. So we always take the lower position. So Ellis, and now the Gemara asks, if that's the case, and your final conclusion is that you only have Tashlumin on Shavuos for 7 days and not 8 days, is why did the Torah write Chag HaSukkos, Lakuche leChag HaMatzos, Why not just suffice with Chag HaMatzos, which will give you the equation that Shavuos has 7 days of Tashlumin? And here we look on the top of Ches, Ma Chag HaMatzos ton lina, af Chag HaSukkos ton lina. So Blineta, this is what we'll cover tomorrow, the Sugya of Lina, and that's going to justify why the Torah needs an equation here between Chag HaMatzos and Chag HaSukkos. Okay, so we'll start tomorrow, Blineder, on the top of Daf Hey. Wishing you